So Resound, the idea for it was actually birthed out of Resonate. And so as an audio engineer myself, I spent a lot of time editing podcasts. Remember just thinking to myself, like, it's a lot of time like editing the ums and ahs, and like, is there a way to automate that?
Okay, welcome to Oh My Pod. We are super excited today because this is our first ever guest on the podcast, and actually the first guest that we've ever recorded. So this is like the first interview for Podigy. So our guest is Jacob Bozarth. He's the co-CEO of Resonate Recordings and Resound, co-CEO and co-founder. Jacob graduated from Middle Tennessee State University, MTSU, with a degree in audio recording. After graduating, he decided not to take the traditional path of moving to Nashville and working all the low-paying jobs for years in the studios. So he took a completely different path. He started editing podcasts in 2014, and within a few years came to the realization that he was probably sitting on something quite huge. So Jacob is the CEO of Resonate Recordings, one of the industry's leading podcast production companies. Resonate has helped more than 3,000 podcasts and has worked with 13 podcasts that hit number 1 in Apple Podcasts. So that's quite hard to achieve. That's very cool. Jacob is now onto another venture, his second company called Resound. Resound is an AI tool that helps podcasters seamlessly edit out all of the filler words from their audio with none of the painstaking labor. And I actually met Jacob after purchasing, I just was going around the internet looking for AI tools for podcasting, and I actually purchased a subscription to Resound the second that I saw it. It was super cost effective, and so I thought, like, well, I'm just gonna give it a go. And I didn't even think about it. I read what the mission was and what they were trying to do, and I just instantly purchased a subscription and started using it. And then I got in contact with Jacob over the messaging, the chat on his website, and we met up. We talked about sort of the future of Resound, what I would like to see as a person who edits podcasts and all that jazz. So I absolutely loved what he was doing with Resound, and really excited to have him on here because this is a really cool first guest for the show. He's got a ton of knowledge, I'm sure. So yeah, how are you, Jacob?
Hey, thanks so much for the kind words and having me on. Yeah, doing well and excited to connect today and have a good conversation with you all.
Totally. Yeah. Resound made perfect sense to me the second I saw it, especially because we were looking at a lot of other AI solutions for podcasting, for copywriting, for all these things, and Resound just popped up on Google, and I'm really, really happy it did.
I would love to hear more of the AI tools because
absolutely,
it's so hot right now. Like, it sounds like maybe that's another episode, but
we should talk about it.
I know everybody's jumping on it.
I'd love to hear what tools have been helpful.
Yeah.
We're saving immense amounts of time and money with just a couple of the AI tools that we're using now. But I think that you probably agree, AI on its own isn't yet enough. It really needs a human touch to make it sound not like a robot still. So, and obviously there's still admin work and some creative work that the person element adds on top. But yeah, we've just taken AI by storm. So we should definitely get into that a little bit later. But
absolutely.
Honestly, I want to hop right into it because I know that you've been doing this since 2014. I've only been doing this since 2020, 2021. So what has happened to the podcasting industry since you've been a part of it?
Oh, wow.
It's a big question.
Yeah. So I remember whenever I first started Resonate, it was kind of whenever this podcasting was just starting to grow. And I remember before I quit my full-time day job in the healthcare industry and went all in on Resonate, telling my wife, there's a wave coming. I can feel it. And I got to get in on this. And it's really proven to be true. It's been I think whenever I first started, there was we're recording on Riverside. There was Zencaster or Zoom, and the quality wasn't great on either one of them. It was hard to accessibility. True. And so I feel like the barrier to entry over the last few years is just with all these great tools coming out and even, some AI solutions and just a lot of resources and support. The barrier to entry, I would say, is just lowered significantly. So if you want to start a podcast, it's a lot easier than it was since I first jumped in. And
it's the same
yeah,
thing
it's
for
been
like
fun to see.
releasing music and stuff too as well. Like there used to be, well, you needed a record label, and now you really don't need a record label anymore. And it's honestly, yeah, like there's same kind of thing has probably happened with podcasting. What about just like on a technical side? Like we've been telling people that podcasting essentially, what I don't want to say needs, but pretty much needs the video element now. And do you agree with that? Like how has that happened?
Yeah, that's really interesting because I mean you've really seen video take off and that trend in video. So I don't know. On one hand, I'm like, podcasting being an audio first medium. For me personally, like I listen to podcasts on the go.
Me too.
While I'm driving, while I'm working out, while I'm doing yard stuff. And so I prefer the audio format of it. With that being said, I do, for example, like I like that sometimes if they do have the video, I can also see that and see what the guest looks like and
it's good.
Pick up on their body language and their demeanor and stuff like that a little bit more than just the voice. And sometimes too, I don't know about you all, but like I'll listen to a lot of true crime shows and I have a picture in my head of what the host looks like.
That's
and
so
sometimes
funny,
it's just helpful to see them, it just
totally is.
It's
brings
crazy,
that to life a little bit more.
Yeah, you can have such a picture in your head of somebody and then it's so different when you see their face or the
totally.
same. Yeah.
And I was actually just like explaining the podcast, like Apple Podcast app to my dad this morning because he actually listens to a lot of podcasts, but he only finds them on YouTube. I feel like the older people are like a lot on YouTube. And so, so they they're not really familiar with the podcast apps or like even Spotify. Like
absolutely
doesn't really know. So like he's just on YouTube and finds the either videos or even just with a still image and he just puts it on the TV and listens and does whatever. It's really funny. So I feel like there's
100%.
Definitely a demographic that
I think that the video is honestly like for me, like you said, like I never will watch a podcast. I'm only ever listening to it. But I do think that if people are like starting from square one, in order to like, I think one of the best ways that they can grow their show is by putting these podcast clips that are hot everywhere, getting those everywhere on social media. And with the video and with the faces and everything, we're really pushing our clients for like face content, like content with their face that's very personable. So the video for me is like, I don't even consider it as part of the full episode, but to clip it up, I just think is so freaking valuable that I can't I can't recommend doing a podcast without also adding the video element for promotion and for your social media.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I definitely listen only to the audio though. I'm definitely an audio person.
Yeah.
But I like the content on like Instagram and stuff.
Yeah. No, I think you all both make such a great point because accessibility, I was actually just discussing that with someone the other day. I was like, hey, if I send a link to someone, there's a chance they may not have Spotify downloaded or Apple Podcast, and anyone can open a YouTube link in their browser and listen to it. So I think accessibility is huge. And then what you said, Justin, about like, why not? It's like SEO, right? It's like, hey, if you have a video for your content, like don't just write a blog, like also put it on YouTube. There's a huge audience there. And so I think people can reach so many more people, and it's pretty low lift, like you said, to create a still image or an audiogram, or just use a tool like Riverside and record the video and also put the video up. And so I don't know that it's going to be like, hey, podcasting is going to become like primarily a video first platform.
No, I don't think so.
No,
I think video is definitely, I think, helping just grow the space even more.
100%
provides more opportunities.
Yep. And speaking of the space, let's just I want to hear about Resound. I want to know if you guys are how you get access to the AI that does that, or if you designed it yourself. Like I'm curious about Resound, and you should also probably just tell people like what Resound actually does, like how it looks and feels.
Yeah, for sure. Great question. So Resound, the idea for it was actually birthed out of Resonate. And so as an audio engineer myself, spent a lot of time editing podcasts. Remember just thinking to myself, like, it's a lot of time like editing the ums and ahs, and like, is there a way to automate that? Not the entire thing, but just like streamline it. And so we did start training our own machine learning models. We hired a machine learning engineer who's still with our team at Resound now. And the first version worked. We were using like more of an open source transcription based approach, which is like tools like Descript use that and whatnot under the hood. And it worked. It worked not perfect, but it worked well. And so we decided, hey, this is something we see value in at Resonate. We believe other people and even individual podcasters could find value in this and help them save them time and money of post production. A stat I always not hang my hat on, but just like to mention is like 44% of podcasters have 3 or less episodes. And I think that for me is like kind of devastating because I'm like, people get into it, they're excited, they have something they want to talk about, they want to share with the world. Low barrier to entry, but then they get in and they realize like, and this is why companies like yours and ours exist, is because like the post-production is hard and it takes time and energy. And so Resound, really kind of the vision is to, automate parts of the production process that are tedious and really, so the way it works, you upload your audio, it finds and recognizes your ums and ahs, and then allows you to go through and review them, edit them, keep them, adjust them, and then export your audio. And we have it set up so you can export as a MP3, a WAV, or a AAF. So like you can export it for, audio engineers and open it in Pro Tools or Logic, and hopefully working on other formats as well.
Yeah, totally.
So that's essentially what it does. Is our kind of saying is like, hey, edit your podcast in minutes, not hours.
Yeah.
And you might ask me this question later, but it's really there. It's not there to replace audio engineers. It's a tool help to serve them.
Totally.
Yep.
I've never met someone who's like, I love tediously editing ums and ahs.
It's the worst part.
The creative elements and stuff like that.
You can love parts of the editing process. I do too. We've outsourced it now, but I did it all to start and I loved it. I still love it. But that is a part that I really I dislike. And there's actually, so I have like 2 thoughts of that. Or I have one question and a thought. My thought about that is it's really interesting to be able to edit out the filler words like that, because the kind of editing that I was doing for podcasts when I started editing was something more of like I don't want to say authentic, because podcasting is authentic no matter what, but it was more of a forgiving type of editing where I wasn't touching a lot of the filler words. I was keeping the format pretty much exactly as recorded, just because of how much extra time it takes to edit out those pieces. And for some people, I don't think that spending the extra money is worth the time that I would spend editing out those words for them. I would say just, don't pay me the extra hour. I'll just leave them all in. It's not that big a deal. But when you use something like Resound, it makes it so seamless that I just think that every single podcast that goes to use something like that is just going to experience like just an overall rise in quality of the whole episode, because it's a piece that is very hard to do for every episode. It takes forever, but if you do it, it makes a big difference. And so I think that, that's my thought about it. And my question, is this the only thing like this on the market right now? Or are there other people who are creeping up with this?
Great question. And thank you for saying that. I would agree. And it's like, it's a science and an art, right? It's like, sometimes you take out an and it's more distracting than it was in there.
Yeah, it adds to the feeling of what they're saying. I completely agree.
Yeah. So before I answer your question, the one thing I will say, because of our connection at Resonate and, definitely a conversation we can have with you all down the road, we are able to use the audio data that we have to train our models. So we're training our own machine learning models, audio in, audio out data. And so it's not a speech to text model like a Rev AI or a DeepGram or Assembly, which are like tools that are out there that have a filler word removal tool like Descript and what's the other one? Podcastle.
Yeah.
Most of them use like a transcription-based approach. The thing with transcription-based, they're not as accurate on the boundaries because it's not training the data. The machine learning input and output is not audio in, audio out, and so it's a lot more precise.
What is it?
So
it's recognizing and learning over time the frequencies or the timing of the words, or like. So is this going to get better? Like, is the program going to get better and better over time? Because it will,
more? And we,
that's really
the more it gets used, and then the more our data set. I mean, honestly, one of the biggest things I've learned so much about machine learning. I'm not a machine learning expert, but in working closely with our team and our machine learning engineer Rafal, have learned so much. So data is one of the most valuable things, high quality data in training machine learning models. And so, we have a lot of audio data. We've manually annotated a lot of things where we've trained the models of where the boundaries are, where to approach the boundaries. So it'll continue to get better and better over time. And that's really kind of what we're focused on. So I'm going to make a bold statement. I'm going to say there aren't any other tools out there that I'm aware of right now that do what we do the way we do it. There's a couple others that are approaching the problem from a different approach, which I would say candidly is not as good of an approach.
Yeah. So this is going to be from my perspective, this is going to be as like it's such a like a, what's the word, like a home name for podcasting. Like people, I really do believe that this is going to be something that is a staple of the podcasting industry, the way that a bunch of other platforms and tools are. Like I think that
sure.
I just don't see why anybody wouldn't use this even as it is right now. And I think it's in the demo stage, right?
Yeah, we're very early. So we're just out of beta. We don't even have V 1.0 of our filler sound. It's like V 0.5.
Yeah.
So
and it already saved me like several minutes of editing, which when you're editing in bulk is enormous. So I think like podcast production agencies or like people who have multiple podcasts or just somebody who's doing it on their own, like it just doesn't, there's no reason why I don't think somebody wouldn't use it. I think that it's just kind of a no-brainer. So at this point, I guess it's just a matter of getting it in front of all the right people and then they're gonna want it.
Yeah, this is gonna be huge for
like
sure.
I'm the right people, and I immediately bought it. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. Honestly, like, yeah, it was super helpful you reaching out because that was our assumption is like, hey, we want to build this tool for creators, but we also want to build it for other podcast agencies, networks, freelance audio engineers that are doing this, like Resonates. And so having you come on and kind of validate that assumption was super helpful. And we've had a handful of others as well that we've spoken with. And yeah, I appreciate those kind words. And yeah, I think that's really how we see ourselves, is really kind of focusing on the AI editing component. As you know, there's a lot of end-to-end tools out there. I don't know if I'm good to ask you a question, but curious to hear your all's perspective on kind of like the end-to-end tools
for AI.
It was just in general, like even like Anchor and even Descript, like expanding, or even even Riverside, like expanding and adding in other things. It's like it's just. I mean, I see the like excitement of going there and being like, hey, we're going to own our customer from end to end. But
yeah, I see exactly what you're saying.
My perspective is like, I like to select my own tech stack and kind of have like the best tool for each specific area, so I would use like Riverside for remote recording.
I will tell you like right away that I don't even pay any mind to the add-on pieces of the services, like you're saying, like when it comes to Riverside and their clip.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
I was just gonna say the clipping
tool and everything. We
don't.
It's just not like, I honestly think if I was starting my own podcast on my own, ready to pick up, my like shorts and do everything myself and like, get to work, then maybe I would consider using tools that are more embedded. But for what we're doing, for the fastest, most efficient way possible and best way possible for the clients, no, I completely agree. I think it's better to have separate tools that are specifically designed to do exactly what they're designed to do.
100%.
And
what's your favorite hosting company? I'm just curious.
Well,
like there's so many out there, and it's in some ways like a very simple problem, but there's a lot of, and it's like the oldest SaaS tool in the podcast space.
We're actually just switching.
It was
we're switching right now.
Well, but Celine, do you know who connected me with them?
Oh, it was
Jacob.
him. Yes.
So
this is so
he knows.
funny.
So,
like this was so cool.
Yeah. So I'll explain.
Okay.
Jacob connected us with a company called Megaphone, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but is like a decently exclusive platform. Like you can't just get a subscription to Megaphone, right? Like you have to.
Yeah. They're more for like networks and enterprise and like stuff like that.
So Megaphone, like, utterly blew my mind when I was on the meeting with them, and it was really similar to the feeling that I had when I was on the phone with Riverside. That was they were telling me about the Riverside Studio feature where you can do a whole bunch of production, like essentially run a virtual recording studio through Riverside. And I was so excited about that. And then they got to the price and I was like, what the heck is that? Like, you're talking about like buying a car like every year, you know? I'm just like, oh, that's terrible. So huge shock. So I had a really similar feeling going through with Megaphone. I was like, this is all way too good to be true. Give me the price. $99 a month. I was like, what is that? That is utterly ridiculous. Buzzsprout is what we were using before. And Buzzsprout is like $16 per client per month. And, at around 15 clients, that starts adding up. So Megaphone is like a quarter of the price with 10 times more features and client portals that our clients can actually log into and see their own statistics. So, I mean, I don't know if someone was just starting from scratch. I always liked Buzzsprout. They were good. Their support was good. Their platform is intuitive, but I really do believe that Megaphone is one of the biggest upgrades that we've seen as Podigy from all of the core services that a podcast production company uses. Going from what we were at with Buzzsprout to Megaphone is going to be an immense change for us, and so
100%.
huge. So I would say the best program that I've ever seen. I didn't even know it existed. It was so good. Is Megaphone. I'm really happy you connected us with Ray. She's awesome.
She's really cool.
Oh yeah, glad to make that intro. And I think you bring up a good point too of like there's different ones for kind of like different sects or different like kind of where you're at. If you're a beginner podcaster, like you said, Buzzsprout is a great platform. I love Albin and the team over there. Their customer support is great.
Their support's amazing.
But if you're growing as a more of a network and industry, like Megaphone's tool is built for that. And so I think it's finding the right tools that fit you 100%. In the right season.
Totally.
And just
and it's just funny how
for everybody
don't
worry. For everybody to be able to access their information for each client, that's just huge. Because with Buzzsprout, like we had to send out statistic reports ourselves because we have the login for everybody, right?
And they can't log in themselves without seeing all of the data. So definitely not ideal. But let's go to another topic, because this is definitely nice for us to geek out on. But I totally think that like the average person, when you're talking about like hosting platforms, they're like, what is wrong with these people? So okay, honestly, we already talked about whether or not you think that AI is going to remove audio engineers, but let's go to something practical. You're deep in this industry. You're probably the highest person I've spoken to in the podcasting industry, and I really want to know, what do you think is the best way for someone to grow their podcast? This could be like a hot topic tip, a couple of tips, or it could be like a more general like marketing message, like overall. Like what do you think?
Oh wow, that is a great question.
Yeah.
Oh, I think one of the biggest things that you can do is really like word of mouth. We've produced a couple of true crime shows, and like those are kind of the extreme examples, but we had feed drops on other shows, and even though that's not technically word of mouth,
feed drops, just give a explanation.
Yeah,
of it
so we would basically trade another show like Dr. Death, and they would drop, hey, check out this new show, Culpable, and so
they drop a whole episode.
Yeah, or just like a kind of a teaser or trailer, like, hey, I want to tell you about this new show, or a plug. And so I think just like word of mouth, connecting with other podcasters, other people in the space, figuring out cross promo. I think that can be so valuable. And the other thing I think is just consistency, consistently releasing your content, letting your listeners know when the next episode's coming.
This is what we say, man. Yep. And it's good to hear it affirmed.
I think your quality is important. And just making sure that there's so many great tools out there today, there's absolutely no reason why someone should be recording on Zoom these days. Like,
I completely agree.
Like,
really quickly, is it Culpable? Is that the true crime podcast that you produce?
It is. Yeah. Culpable.
So is that under a Resonate umbrella, or you just, it's just you produce it?
Yeah. So Interest, that's kind of a loaded question. So we released the season 1 under another company called Black Mountain Media, and we partnered with Tenderfoot TV, who did Up and Vanished, Atlanta Monster. We actually rolled Black Mountain into Resonate as Resonate Originals, just because we had the production team to back it, and the production team at Resonate was already the ones doing a lot of production, and so season 2 came out under Resonate Originals.
Okay.
But yeah, it's an investigative true crime show, and I mean, that's an interesting, because like I worked with Payne Lindsay on Up and Vanished season 1, had always kind of thought like, hey, it would be cool to like partner with them on a more like partner level rather than just like or work for hire.
Yeah, of course.
Doing audio editing. And so, whenever we had the idea, Dennis Cooper, who's the host, is my good friend, and he was like, hey, I'd really like to do a podcast. I was like, dude, I got a pipe dream. It might be crazy, but let's go for it, and pitch the idea to Donald and Payne at Tenderfoot, and they were like, yeah, we'd love to partner with you all on this. And so obviously like that we gained a lot of their audience, and that's really how that show kind of took off.
You're starting from a much higher point than the average person who would get into the industry. So just like, I'm really curious about this. So you are talking about Black Mountain Media, which is a podcast network, right?
Yeah, if you want to call it that.
That's
just
a
had one
distinction.
show.
That's a distinction that I'm just curious about, is like the difference between like the podcast networks and then a podcast production agency. Because so is Black Mountain Media, you don't own Black Mountain Media?
Yeah, so I did own I have like shared ownership with other people as well, and Dennis Cooper is one of those. So we decided to shut down Black Mountain Media. Resonate Recordings actually acquired the assets, being culpable after season 1 was done, just because there was a lot of synergy between the two companies. And so then we did season 2 under Resonate Originals. And so even though it's still under Resonate Recordings umbrella, it's the same company. So
and how are the like downloads and stuff, if you don't mind like sharing, like how many downloads do you guys start out with, and then how many episodes have you done, and what's the growth and what have the results been like too, like for like maybe monetarily or just in terms of just like the company?
Yeah, before I share that, the thing I will say is just to affirm like the consistency, and then also just like putting resources behind marketing. So that was one of the biggest reasons why we, gave up 50% of the show to someone like Tenderfoot, is because they're doing so much of Tenderfoot TV. Yeah. So they're doing so much of the marketing, the PR, the cross promo on their other shows. And so I think that's another huge thing, is like, if you have another show or your friend has another show, like have them cross promote the show, tell them about it. I think those are very effective ways to grow your audience. And obviously Tenderfoot had that on a very high level. I don't know if you're familiar with Up and Vanished season 1 was kind of their first show they did. It helped solve or brought a lot of light to an 11-year-old cold case in Osceola, Georgia, and which led to 2 arrests. And so it got kind of a national spotlight. Payne was on, Dateline, Good Morning America, like all these national, it says podcaster helps solve, 11-year-old cold case.
That's an insane story.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool story. They did a TV show on it and all kinds of stuff.
Wow.
So that's kind of like, the launch board we had.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as downloads, total, I think Culpable season 1 and season 2 has about 38 million downloads.
Wow.
I think season 1 was well over 1 million downloads per episode. Season 2, which was released last like winter, is average like it's a ballpark like 600 to 700,000 downloads per episode.
Insane.
And then the next show we released, Undetermined, I think it was 8 or 10 episodes, and it has about 5 million or so downloads. So about 500,000 per episode.
Incredible numbers. That's crazy. That seems like it's just, it blows my mind to think about that. And so the company who did the marketing for it, is this a company that like anybody can work with if you have the budget, or how does it work? Like is it a jaded industry, or how does it like, I'm so curious about that.
That's a loaded question.
Yeah.
Definitely a jaded industry now.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, man, I think Yeah, that's like the monetization tool is something that's really hard to figure out, and I don't feel like anyone. I won't get off on a rabbit trail too much, but there's still not like a great solution for it. And I think that's why like what Megaphone's doing is appealing to me, because it's like, oh, they are doing that. And there's not a one size fits all by any means. So no, Tenderfoot would be like the equivalent of a Wondery or a
right.
iHeart, like Cadence 13 type of company.
Okay.
So they they will partner with people and they take show ideas and pitches and stuff like that, but they do get a lot of pitches. And so really it was because of the existing relationship, I think, that and they knew we did do good production quality work.
Of course, yeah.
We sent them a pitch and a demo and a trailer or two, and they're like,
sounds like the TV industry.
Interesting story. Yeah.
It's very different from the world that we're in, working with kind of like individuals and using podcasting as not just for the full audio, but also for your full like content marketing, social media, everything kind of sphere. So it's very interesting to hear what's happening at the highest levels of the industry. It just sounds a lot to me. When you say pitching the shows, I'm just like, wow, like that's happening. That's happening at the top. While we're getting, smaller download numbers, but still having a big impact on people's overall businesses. But that's very, very cool to hear.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing, is there's definitely not a one size fits all. And I think the application of podcasting is so broad. It's like you have a branded podcast, you have an internal podcast.
Yeah,
and
internal podcast, totally.
Yeah, a lot of people come to us and they're like, what is a successful show? And we're like, well, there's not an answer to that. It's like, it's so relative to like what your goals are, because I know people that have, landed one client from their podcast that gets 100 downloads.
Yes.
And that one client paid, 6 figures to them or whatever that was.
For the podcast production for a year. Yeah. That's totally happens.
Yeah. So it's so relative to like what your goals are and defining those. And so, obviously, even going back to the question of like how to market and grow your podcast, is like, it really depends on what your goal is.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like are you trying to engage your employees through an internal podcast? Are you trying to grow brand awareness? Are you trying to get other, build connections for other customers? Like what's your goal? Are you trying to get 1 million listeners and sell general ads about Rothy's and Blue Apron?
Such a different world. For some reason, that's the first time I've ever thought of it that way. But you just like made me think about it a completely different way. Because you don't need to do one thing or the other with podcasting. Your goals can be really fit to whatever your business is or whatever you're trying to get from it. And that we actually have a client who like just released his 100th episode with us a little while ago. So he's been with us for like almost 2 years from the very start. When he came to me, I had no idea what podcasting was doing, really. I was just producing the audio, and like, you know how it goes. Like, you learn one thing and then you're like, okay, now I know what's going on. And then you learn another thing that teaches you that you actually don't know anything about what you thought you knew. That just keeps going until eventually drives you crazy. But like, you're just always learning new stuff. And at the time, he's like, I want to start a podcast. I want to do it weekly. He's willing to invest a bunch of money in it, which I thought was cool. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, you're willing to set some real money aside. And at the time, not really realizing how good of an investment it was. And he said, I really only need to get 1 or 2 clients a year from this podcast. And I was like, wow. So he's going to produce 52 episodes in a year, and all he really needs is 1 to 2 clients. He's a wealth manager, so his clients are incredibly high paying. Like, they're high value clients, low quantity. And well, I mean, he's done it for 100 episodes and he's still going weekly. So it's paid off. The podcast, we also work with a real estate team who, like, first 8 episodes, not that many downloads. Real estate is kind of a shoddy, like, hit or miss with podcasting because it's very like geographically based. So you kind of need like a local audience when you're talking about local trends and stuff. So it's kind of a weird thing where your audience is limited. And
also it's really visual, like you said, right? Like, if you have a listing, like, it's very visual. So that also kind of takes a bit away from the podcasting. But it's actually doing great.
So it's kind of it's doing great, but not necessarily downloads wise. I mean, it is still doing okay that way, but within their first 8 episodes, they sold like a house, like a quite a large listing. So they paid off in commission. They paid off their podcast production for, like 4 years or however much. It might be more. I'm totally guesstimating with that, but the value, I feel like the higher the value you have on the head of one client, like getting one client, the more your podcast is likely to just pay out dividends on the time and the money that you actually put in. So people are like, well, can a podcast make money? I'm like, well, depends on what you mean by that, because the podcast itself is very unlikely to make any money for the first couple of years. But
well, it always depends.
It depends who you are too. But there's like 10 ways to make money from it outside.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
So
yeah. But this is so interesting because we're like all podcast production companies. Obviously, like yours is way bigger, but like it's funny how it's something completely different, not just in size, but in what we actually do and who our client is. So it's like we're not in competition whatsoever. Even if
I don't
somebody
feel like
else from the same size, even with that person, we're not in competition because it's like so different, and we're right for certain people, but we're completely wrong for other people. So it's like, it's so interesting. Like it's
and that you all being aware of that too probably enables you to serve the customers you serve even better.
Totally.
To be able to
we
do it really
we would never take on an audio drama or something because we don't have the systems in place to edit them. And I mean we could, but it's just not what we're doing. So that's super cool.
Yeah. I love of that about the podcast industry is that there's so many different applications. There's no like central power source. Apple arguably could be that, but they haven't been.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful for that there's, it's this indie platform, but you also have people like Joe Rogan and
who
other
are just
huge people. It's almost like social media meets radio meets TV.
Absolutely.
It's really cool.
Yeah, totally. So we're going on. It's 30. We're at like 35 minutes so far, and I honestly, no joke, could sit here for probably like a total of like 2 hours and talk because there's it's crazy how you get into one thing and then you get into the next thing. So I would probably really like to have you back on at some point. And I was actually just thinking as you were talking about the guy who's doing the programming for the data and everything for the AI. I don't know if that's somebody who would be comfortable on a podcast, but I'm just so curious about what's going on there.
Yeah.
So we could just we can maybe throw that idea around. Let's do, I'm going to ask you one more question and then we'll ask where people can find you and find Resound and all that stuff. So what's been the biggest, and this is probably a question that I'm more curious about from a business perspective, but what has been the biggest failure or hurdle or challenge that you've come across and overcome, or maybe not overcome, but had to redirect in some way while starting either of these companies or both of these companies? I'm sure there's been some just mind-boggling challenges that you've had to get around.
Oh man, that's a good question. Yeah, and I apologize. Maybe one of the hurdles, you can hear it. My kids just got home from school, so I apologize if you hear any.
No, it's all good
in the background.
Don't worry about it.
No, that's definitely not the biggest challenge. I would say, I think one of the biggest challenges, and that's why, like, even I admire this about you all, is you all know what your focus is. You know what you're focused on. I think that can be the biggest temptation, or was the biggest temptation at Resonate, was like, we want to do all things for all people.
Yes.
We want to build our own hosting. We want to build our remote recorder. And we did all those things to serve our clients. But I look back on that and I see how much focus it took off of like what our bread and butter and like what we do really well. And partly that's part of the reason why we spun out Resound, was like, hey, let's really feel like there's a huge opportunity here, but we don't want it to take away the focus from what we're doing at Resonate. So let's spin it out and do our own thing as a new company. And that was huge, I think, for me. And then, the other challenge, sorry.
Yeah, no, go for it.
I would say the other challenge, I think, for me is just kind of like you mentioned, like you learn so much every day, and you learn so much about yourself, about what you're doing, and, just being open and being a constant learner and not getting overwhelmed, not putting too much pressure on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, just like giving some space for myself to take care of myself, to prioritize my needs, to be like caring for myself allows me to be a better leader and care for my people and not get burnout. And like, I think, you know, I'm a driven entrepreneur, and so I can just go.
Totally.
And so just slowing down, taking the pressure off, just being like, I've been in the oh shit moments enough to where I'm like, it's going to be okay. You're going to get through this, you know? And
that's great,
I think as individuals, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves and feel like, you know, it's all riding on us. And sometimes you just need to take the pressure off, be yourself, be confident in who you are, and just move forward. And sometimes that's hard.
I got one question on the figuring out who you wanted to serve with Resonate. You mentioned that you had worked with a business coach, and that, or maybe a couple, and that it had been some of the most valuable experiences that you've had for your company. Do you want to elaborate on that? Because I completely agree.
Yeah.
Like, I think you can save like endless money and time just by working with somebody who helps direct your efforts.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, so much of it was just like slowing down and reflecting. You know, you're in the business, and it's hard sometimes to see like what's actually going on, or your vision is kind of clouded by the day-to-day like chaos, right? Or the next fire you're putting out. And so just to stop and slow down and reflect and like brainstorm with somebody, I think that was super helpful. I mean, there's a number of things I could say about that, but even today I was like, it's those things that come up and you're like, okay, yeah, I probably shouldn't have more than 5 direct reports. Like that was a piece of advice my mentor gave me. And like, there's just so many things of even from trusting your gut to like, just a lot of good, like even cultural things of just like really learning to care for your people, learning to provide a healthy culture where people feel empowered. I mean, I think it's a lot of different things of business coaches, like books. I know there's a book called Empowered, and it's more around product management and development. But a big thing there is like with software engineers, like you don't hire them. You get the most out of them whenever you don't tell them what to build, but you give them a problem and you let them decide what to build. And I think, you know, we do a huge disservice to people whenever we hire them, and then we just like give them tasks, say, here, do this, do this, rather than to say like, hey, like I want to empower you, I want to support you, like you are great at this thing, like you do you and do your thing, and obviously be there to support them, give them guidance and whatnot. But rather than telling them what to do, just letting them kind of decide sometimes, I think is a really valuable thing, and you'll get the most out of the person that you're working with whenever you do that.
Yeah,
totally. What about like if you have someone do a job like a virtual assistant or something, though, then I was just thinking about people who work with us, and I was thinking, I do want to do that for them too. But then I was thinking, like, how can I give them like space to do it when it's like upload file here, download file here, schedule task here? You know, I'm like, okay, I want to empower you, but also like there's some admin stuff that needs to get done.
Absolutely. No. Yeah, and I think that probably does apply more for like people and like leaders that you're empowering, rather than like kind of someone who's doing a specific task. Or management.
I just don't want to be a bad company owner and like just give tasks, because I was thinking I give a lot of tasks.
Hey,
no, you're not a bad
and sometimes
boss.
you have to do that, you know. No.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Well, this has been super fun, man. Like there's so much to learn from you. We're like, I feel like we're like young, like we're like kids in the industry, and I need some guidance. This has been really, really cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. It's been a pleasure to connect, and
thank you. Thank you for the time as well. You're obviously very busy.
Partner with you guys, and I want to ask a question. What's it like? Because my wife actually, she worked with Resonate. She's now went back to school, counseling and psychology. But she was a producer at Resonate, so we worked really close together, and I love working together. But curious to hear from your all's perspective, what's it like? Because you all are fiancés, right? So what's it like working so close together? Like,
what do you think? What do you think, Celine?
I think it works really well.
Is it terrible?
I would say like 95% of the time, it's a huge positive. That's me and you, that it is me and you working, because we're just always together. And, you know, whenever something is pressing, like it's just no question, we can do it whenever. Yeah,
you don't have to send out like a Zoom call link or something to get a problem solved.
So much, like, especially when I started working for Podigy, nobody would have been able to do it like everything so fast, because I did have like so many questions at first. So
It was all
Yeah, it
questions
was
at the
all
start, and we had to just go through that, and also like Celine obviously is not a native English speaker,
And
so we've done a lot of work on.
And I was
like,
a teacher
just
before,
how to,
like I had nothing to do with this at all.
yeah.
Second grade.
You've got like a teacher from across the world coming into a marketing / entrepreneurial role. So there was a lot of kind of working back and forth on even just like, how do you write a professional sounding email in English? Like, how does that,
and let
how
me
does
just
that work?
like, that's like where the AI comes in so handy, because that problem is like non-existing now anymore. Like no problem whatsoever. No, but actually like it's awesome. And I mean, here and there, I think there were like one or two things where we were like fighting about stuff, but like, it rarely happens. I feel like it works really well. And then obviously you have to make sure to not be just in work mindset all the time.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Separating the work from the rest of the life. That's probably the biggest challenge. Like we'll go on a walk.
And you'll just be rambling.
And it'll be like an hour walk. And then suddenly I'll realize that we've been talking about work for the last hour.
Exactly.
But we love what we're doing right now. We're super excited.
Exactly.
So that probably answers that. A lot of people have told us like, oh, like don't work together. Like that's how you like, people have actually said like, if you work together, like that's the downfall of your whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I mean, we want to be able to travel back and forth from Italy to Canada whenever we want. And we can't be tied down. And so this is our chance to build something that we can be really proud of. Like I'm really proud of what we are building here. I'm really, really proud of the service that we offer to people and the headache that we completely remove from a lot of people's lives. And we're giving people a platform to speak about stuff that they love. I mean, there's a lot of fire in that. Like there's a lot of, I always think of things between like things that there's no fire and it's just dead, and then things where the fire is like really alive. And people talking about what they love doing is an industry. If that's the industry that you get to be a part of, I mean, you're living in a world of just constant like light. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I really like what we're
too.
doing. And
I love that.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
So,
I was going to say, like my co-founder Mark is like one of my really good friends, and Dennis is one of my really good friends with Culpable. And so like, there's something beautiful. Like part of me wants to like, we could do a whole series on working with your friends and family.
Totally.
It's so beautiful, I think, in a lot of ways, because there's already that established trust there that you have, and just rapport. But yeah, spot on what you all said. Like I remember one time my wife being like, hey, we got to quit talking about Resonate all the time, because that's all we talk about.
Yeah.
And
it happens,
I'm like, oh, you're right. We need to stop talking about it. And but yeah, I think it is a beautiful thing. It does have unique challenges, but it's also, in my opinion, like the pros outweigh the cons.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I mean, what better way to feel connected to your partner than to literally have them involved in arguably the main focus of your life, your career, right? Like to have your careers intertwined like that.
Yeah.
Is
and it's just like everything else.
People go to work 9 to 5 and they never see each other, you know, and this way we're working on something together. We're accomplishing things together. So it's really cool.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you guys for sharing that.
Of course. Yeah. No, thank you for asking. So just to wrap it up, where can people find you online? You can plug anything you want. Definitely plug Resound.
Yeah.
I think that people might actually just want to give that a shot.
100%.
Yeah, for sure. So Resound, the easiest way is just go to resound.fm. You can sign up for free to get started, to test it out. You can find us on socials. I think it's at resound.fm or resound.fm. And then Resonate Recordings is resonaterecordings.com there. Me personally, I'm J.E. Bozarth, Bozarth, on Twitter, Instagram, all those fun places, LinkedIn. Cool. Would love to connect. Jacob Bozarth. So
cool. And any podcast or podcasts to recommend?
Oh, wow.
Other than Culpable?
Yeah, Culpable is a great one.
Totally, I bet.
Another one I really like, it's kind of a classic, but I guess is S-Town or Shit Town. Okay. I don't know if you guys have heard that one.
Never.
And then the other one I would say I'm been most interested in lately is Huberman Labs. I know he went viral lately, but I think just like going back to taking care of yourself, like physical health, mental health, those totally. Like just the holistic it's important, and I think I've enjoyed listening to those things.
Yeah, I could talk about that an hour
insights
now.
And
for sure. I love that stuff. Like that's
Yeah.
up my alley 100%.
We were actually just talking about the human his podcast a couple days ago. So that's funny to hear you say that. It has definitely gone very viral, but I think that he helps a lot of people, or that kind of message helps a lot of people, because like being an entrepreneur, like your main tool is you, and so if you are not in the best shape, then it's just gonna like it's funny because the more time you spend on making yourself better, the more productive you're going to be when you do sit down to do work. So it's kind of a catch-22.
Yeah, I don't know if you've read the book Build, but he talks about how as an entrepreneur, like you are an extreme athlete, right? It's not necessarily physically, but you need a regimen. You need to sleep. You need to take care of yourself. And because you're operating at a very high capacity
all the time,
as a leader, as an entrepreneur, always thinking, and you need to be in tip-top performance mentally.
Yeah.
No one ever talks about that. That's a really good take.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a pleasure. I honestly think that somewhere down the road, we got to just get you back on, and we can talk about some of the other things. I'm sure that Resound is going to have a lot of pieces to add to its story once we get back together again, and I'm really interested in for everybody to know right now, we actually weren't able to use Resound just because there wasn't a way to use it on Ableton, which is what our engineers use. But the second that it becomes available, we are going to put it everywhere in the business. It's going to become a staple of what we do. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how it evolves.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would love to come back on and have some other people in mind that might be good to get on here.
Totally. Okay, great. Thank you so much.